Energy is a very interesting topic of conversation. If you look back maybe 100, 120 odd years ago, we were getting from A to B in steam trains and horse and cart. Steam was an amazing revelation. Electricity came on the scene, and it was pioneering, I suppose, the ever-evolving world of energy as we know it today. I thought it would be interesting to speak to some people within the energy field, within different sectors, to break down the future of energy and to figure out what energy actually looks like on both a micro scale, being residential homes, community areas, things like that, right up to the macro scale when we're talking about energy conglomerates, energy suppliers, fuel sources, things like solar farms, wind farms, basically anything that combats what traditionally we would look at energy today as, basically coal and things like that. So I've done just that. I've gone out and I've spoken to a few different colleagues, a few different people that are in different areas of the energy field. And the reason I've done that is because I appreciate that so many of you guys are in pretty much every way related or have some sort of relationship with energy to a degree, whether you're a builder, whether you're an electrician, you might be a plumber or whatever it is. But it does kind of dictate the future of our trades. I mean, if you think of electricians, looking forward, there's this massive push now over the last 20 odd years towards solar. And so, that's been a big segue for a lot of electricians and, of course, then builders, because builders have to be the ones that build the houses that have the solar panels on them and all this kind of stuff. So it's really interesting, I think, when you look at the future of energy and where it's potentially heading, so we can, I suppose, maybe not foresee, but certainly take into consideration the fact that we are in an evolving space and there is a load of energy sources out there that may not be mainstream yet, but potentially could well be. So it's a 3-part series, and in the first series, we're talking a lot on that macro scale. We're talking about energy from a grid perspective. In the second episode, we're talking about energy that's fueling communities, and specifically, we're talking about a lot of solar there. And then in the last episode, we're talking about the residential scale, so homes and those homes that would fit into the communities that would form part of the grid. So it's a pretty interesting topic. I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of it. And by all means, if you have any questions or if you've got any experiences with anything to do with these topics that we speak about, by all means, contribute. We'd love to have you part of the conversation. Head across to the Facebook community and you can join the conversation there, or better still, you can start the conversation. There's thousands and thousands of people in that group from all over the world, and everyone's got some amazing experience. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's jump in, enjoy this podcast, enjoy this series, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. It is with an insane amount of joy that I come to you today saying that this podcast is proudly brought to you by the Sightshed's Surf and Learn program. That's right, this year we are running our second Surf and Learn program over in the Maldives off the back of the hugely successful Surf and Learn 2018 program that we ran. It was so much fun, I cannot even begin to explain how cool these events are. We basically take a group of enthusiasts, if you will, across to the Maldives. We live on a luxury motor yacht for 10 days, and we basically live the high life. We surf, we eat like kings, we drink if that's your thing, you can fish, you can do whatever you want, you can go scuba diving, all that crazy stuff. And in the evenings, we do a business workshop. So it is a tax-deductible trip, and it is just the most amazing experience ever. Last year was mind-bogglingly good. Anyway, obviously, we're taking a boat, and boats have limited seats. So if you want to come to this event, you need to head across to the sightshed.com/events, click on the Surf and Learn 2019 link, and go to the landing page there where you can secure your spot or you can find out more information about the event. These tickets will go quickly. There's a huge percentage of the guys that came last year want to come again, and for reasons which you will see on the landing page. It is absolutely fantastic. The direct landing page is thesiteshed.com/surf2019 if you want to go straight there. It is just amazing, guys. I really hope to see you there. The content's brilliant. The networking's fantastic. The location and the experience is like nothing you will ever experience. I can tell you, it is just brilliant. Anyway, that's all from me. I hope to see you there and enjoy the podcast. A couple of years ago, I was at a trade show in Melbourne, I'm pretty sure it was. And there was a fellow there who had a basically television screen set up, and you walk up to him and he puts a mask on your face, and as soon as you put the mask on your face, all of a sudden this massive construction site building appeared in front of you with garbage bins, with trucks, with lollipop men, all this kind of stuff basically right in front of you. And I was blown away. I thought, wow, this is really cool. And that was really my introduction into virtual reality, augmented reality. A couple of years later, I was overseas at a trade conference, and there was a fellow there who had a similar sort of business, I suppose. And he was talking to me about the future of virtual reality, augmented reality in relation to the trades, and how one day it may even be a case of, instead of where we're out on site as tradespeople, looking at drawings and then trying to correlate the drawings to the actual building frame and what we're looking at, you may be able to put a pair of goggles on and just look directly at it, and then take the goggles off and just go and build what you've looked at. So I found it a really interesting space, and ever since then I've been really intrigued with the whole world of VR and AR. And today we're talking about that. We've got a guest on the show who is from a company down in Melbourne, Australia, and they basically specialize in VR. This is an amazing conversation. It's something that I think we're going to be seeing so much more of, and a lot of the questions I had were in relation to how the future of that may look for the industry. So I know you guys are going to really enjoy this. And if you do have any questions, or if you want to follow up with anything specifically, by all means, head across to the show notes for this episode, and you can ask them there. Or if you see this come across in Facebook or Instagram or social media or wherever that might be, or in our newsletter, by all means, just reply, ask questions, and I will endeavor to get them answered for you. It is an exciting space. I hope I covered off enough of the important points for you guys. The likelihood of that is pretty slim, I might add. So if I did miss anything, or if you want any further clarification, by all means, let me know. But apart from that, let's jump right in, guys. Enjoy.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones, and you're joining us once again for another exciting interview. Today, we're talking about the wonderful world of solar once again. Bit of a follow-up from the podcast you would have heard a few weeks back with Andrew, who was talking a little bit more on the market side of things and coming from an industry perspective. Whereas today, I've got Alex on the show today. Alex is from shinehub.com.au, and Alex deals more with, I suppose, the solar space, but on the residential and the community level. So I've asked Alex to come on the show today to talk a little bit about, I suppose, the reality of solar, how it would affect homeowners, the potential opportunities there for tradespeople, builders, electricians, etc., and then some of the initiatives around the community, I suppose, programs that they're running, and how that could affect us looking forward. So, Alex, welcome.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, a friend of mine, I was telling you offline, down at the beach here, he reached out to me and said that we should connect, which is what we've done. I think he saw you speak somewhere at a council event or something like that, and my ears immediately pricked up because, as a lot of the listeners know, I do love the exciting space of renewable energy, sustainable energy, solar, and I think there's, it's such an interesting, from a tradesperson's perspective, like there's so much movement happening in that space. I just think there's so many amazing opportunities that have basically been switched on in the last 10 years, and I can only imagine what's going to happen in 10 years to come.
Yeah, it's a really exciting space, and it's changing in a very dynamic way right now. Which is what we're seeing with the whole introduction of affordable batteries for homeowners.
Right. So, I mean, and this is one of the things I suppose that I really wanted to touch on because, when I was talking to Andrew a couple of weeks back, and we're talking about, the basically from the grid perspective, where power and energy is coming from a grid perspective, and then there's a lot of guys out there that are sort of dipping their toes, I suppose, into that solar space, and they're with the introduction of products like the Tesla home batteries and all this kind of thing, it's becoming more and more popular, and rightfully so. I'm curious though, Alex, is what I really want to know, and this is probably a bit of a macro question, but coming from a solar perspective, is it ever going to be a situation where solar can replace the energy that we currently use through fossil fuel?
Absolutely, and that's
really?
And that's exactly why we run the community programs that we do.
Right.
Because really it's a three-step process. Number one is we need to have people able to generate and store their own power to be self-sufficient. Right? So that means that all the homes that have a good roof for solar and it can make sense for them, they can actually be owning their own power, using their own power. And obviously if they're doing that, they're not using that coal power, that grid power. But there's a lot of people that don't have the ability to go solar. Like myself, I'm renting an apartment right now. I can't put panels on the roof. I can't put a battery in the house. So that's really where the next step comes. And that's about the virtual power plants. And what that means is we can actually group together all of these batteries in the homes, and we can group them together online into one unified dashboard. And we can actually start to sell that power to the grid during times when they need it. So, for example, when everyone comes home from work and there's not a whole lot of solar out there, they're turning on all these gas and coal power plants to supply enough power. Well, an alternative to that is to draw the power from the home batteries, from that reservoir of stored solar energy. And that's what we're working on right now as part of the Sydney program. And that's what's going to open up the full transition to renewable energy society in complement with the grid level batteries like the big battery in South Australia.
So when we're talking about like a solar energy from a grid, from a community perspective, can you shed a bit of light on what that looks like practically? I mean, is it a bunch of homes that are all connected together with solar panels on their roof?
In the future, yes. And there's really two ways of going about it. So you can try and kind of take your community off the grid or make like a microgrid, essentially disconnecting the majority of your community from the main power supplies. But this is, I think, the wrong approach in my opinion. The other way is to approach it from a different direction, which is starting by getting the locally generated solar power with batteries in the homes within the community. Linking them together in virtual power plants. So what that means is we're able to get the power from the homes and support the grid or the community at large. Down the track, what we'll also be looking to do is install solar farms and solar batteries at the community level so that we can actually have a locally produced and transacting economy. So you can actually, in the future, you'll be able to buy and sell power from your neighbors or your local community. Perhaps it's a council, perhaps it's a co-op. In Germany, for example, they're running with co-ops, locally owned co-ops. And that is kind of the end game. But we don't have to wait for that to be ready before we can start taking steps in that direction.
Okay. And so when we're talking about buying and trading electricities with neighbours and that kind of stuff, it could be me being ignorant, not knowing enough about this, but is effectively the movement towards solar to kind of help people get away from that model where they're buying power and they're trading? Like, is it not to sort of make them self-sufficient?
Exactly. Self-sufficiency is the number one thing that we're hearing in these communities. And it's remarkable how educated people are now about energy and about how that works. And they're sick and tired of an old system that doesn't serve them. Like, if you think about it for a second, you have a power plant way off in the bush somewhere, and there's tons of power lines, very expensive ones, to bring that power to each and every person. And that's not required. What's required is locally generated energy that can be traded just from your neighbors. And so by avoiding that huge power line cost, avoiding the huge power plant cost, you're able to actually enjoy lower costs of electricity and not have to buy power from these big energy companies. And that is really the motivating factor. Communities want to be more self-sufficient, but there's just not a good way of doing it yet. And so when we bring these programs into communities and they see this as a real alternative option, it's cost effective today, that's when they really get excited.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so are these existing communities that we can implement this technology into, or is it cities, towns that have not yet been built?
We're working exclusively with places that are already built. So if you want to do that final vision, that kind of end vision where you're locally trading, you can do that right now with new builds because you're building your own grid, right? Which is the way the power is shared. Yep. However, when we're working with existing cities, towns, et cetera, there's already grids built, and so we need to work with what's already there. So we're focusing on that because that is by far the biggest market and the biggest need for assistance.
And so for that to effectively work, would it be fair to say that the entire community involved has to buy into it? Like they've got to be invested?
Definitely not. Okay. So I'll give you an example, right? We have customers from South Australia who were paying heaps for their energy from the grid. They've gotten now a solar and battery system that's brought that down by around 90%. We have hordes of customers that are paying about $10 a month for electricity, right, from the grid, right? So almost nothing from the grid. We're now bringing back in the virtual power plant software. So what that means is they're going to be able to start selling their battery power once or twice a month for a higher rate. In the future, we'll provide an option where they can actually buy and sell power locally, but everyone can choose what they want, right? If someone wants to just keep buying power from the normal grid, from how they've been doing it for 20 years, they can continue to do that. We're not forcing anyone to do anything. All we're doing is working with the existing infrastructure to provide a better alternative.
And so from a cost perspective, obviously, installing the solar technology into properties or communities is a relatively costly exercise. However, I'm guessing that the angle is over time you'll save money because you won't be paying for traditional electricity, blah, blah, blah. Is that pretty accurate?
For solar, as usual, yes. But that's why we created Shine Up, because we saw the opportunity to dramatically lower the cost through two things. Number one, a software platform that automates a lot of the project management side, a lot of the administrative side, which is typically very manual work. And then the second is by working with communities and doing these group buys. So when we do that, we get 200 to 300 customers at a time. We become one of the biggest battery purchasers in all of Australia. And when we combine those two things together, we can actually bring the price of solar and batteries down so much that in most cases, it's actually cheaper to get a solar and battery system on a pay-as-you-go plan than it is to stay with your current electricity company.
Wow. And so then how does that, at the moment, is there enough solar to run the home around the clock? What happens on days where, the sun isn't shining, or, if you have a week of rain or whatever? Is it always going to have a backup?
There's two different types of systems. One's called the on-grid system, which is where you're still connected to the grid in case you need a little bit extra. Mm-hmm. And the way that works, and that's by far the most popular option, the way that works is you have your solar panels producing during the daytime. That covers your daytime electricity and also charges up your battery. Then at night, you have that stored battery power to power your house. And yes, designed properly, we have engineers in-house that do this every day. Designed properly, you can run your house day and night from the panels and battery. In most cases, right? If you have a big 3-phase aircon or something like welders or things, then that's not the case. But for a typical home, we're seeing the majority, if not all of that, can be run from the panels and battery. And then if there's a rainy day or you have a big party and you turn everything on and you're using heaps of power, then you can always draw from the grid, and that happens automatically. So you can think about it like panel power is priority 1, battery power is priority 2, and then grid power is priority 3.
So the batteries will basically communicate directly with the grid, and when they're running low, they just switch over. Is that the idea?
Exactly. Right. So think of it like spilling over in buckets, right? As the water keeps going, it kind of just spills over and over. And that all happens automatically. You don't have to track that or manage that. That's all controlled in what's called the inverter, which is the connection between the panels, the battery, and the house and also the grid.
And is that how it works on the going the other way as well? Like if you're harvesting solar electricity and you're not using it, would it then spill back into the grid?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. We interrupt this podcast today to talk to you very quickly about Tradie Web Guy's content creation program. That program has been designed specifically for trade-based organizations as a way that you guys as trade business owners can start creating content that enables you to engage better with your customers and your potential customers. It will enable you to build trust and build rapport because what you're doing is you're investing in educating them. Biggest problem that we see with our customers today is that they're not regularly updating their websites. And that's a problem because first of all, the search engines are looking for that. And second of all, potential customers are also looking for it. Tradie Web Guy's content creation program has been specifically designed to help you get regular, relevant content on your website consistently every month. We know that it's hard when you're out there on the tools, and we know that sometimes you don't always have the time to be able to do these things yourself. So we're taking it off your hands for you. It's a service that we're offering for you guys. We want to make sure that you're getting this done because we know how important it is. Anyway, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/content, fill in the form, and one of our representatives will come back to you. From an installation perspective, like there's a lot of listeners out there that are, electricians and builders and whatnot. I'm curious, what are the rules, parameters, licenses, etc., around the solar space? And, what are the listeners out there, if they were something that, they're interested in doing? I mean, I think realistically, they're going to come across it at some point in time, so they may as well know where to go to, become qualified or whatever. Who governs that at the moment?
So there's a few different organizations. There's the Clean Energy Council, which provides the certifications for panels, and they also provide certifications for battery installation as well. Surprisingly, there's actually no legal requirement to have any sort of battery training or certification to install a battery right now. However, with the various government incentives that are coming out, they are starting to require that, and it's something that we require as part of our community programs as well. It's a big opportunity for electricians because only about 15% of solar installers right now have that battery training certification. And if you spend the time to get that, it takes about a week. You can go to Green RTO or Solar Training Center. There's a few around the country. It's about a 1-week course. But if you get that, you're all of a sudden leapfrogging a lot of the more experienced solar installers, and you can really position yourself well for the future growth of this industry.
And then what about, I suppose, for builders and things like that? Like, is there certain things that they need to comply to in order to be able to, like from a construction perspective, is there much difference between what's being done at the moment and what needs to be done looking forward for this new technology?
No, not really. I mean, just like they would hire plumbers for water and roofers for roofing, you'd hire a solar installer to do the installation and
which could also be an electrician.
Yeah, I mean, they're always electricians. But yes, so you have to be an electrician, and then you have to get the solar training to do solar properly.
Okay.
And we're seeing that really taking off. Like you look at Metricon and a few others, they're actually building solar and batteries into their homes as an offering. And
right.
I couldn't believe it because if you think of a billboard, right, you have a few seconds to catch someone's eye. And I'm driving around and I'm seeing billboards now. They're saying, new solar homes, this development, that development. And so with only 3 or 4 words, they're choosing solar to be one of them. Mm-hmm. And what that tells me is that they're finding that customers really want solar. And by bringing it into the package, it makes the home more attractive as well.
So I remember years and years ago when solar sort of kicked off in Australia, and there was a lot of government funding and rebates and that kind of stuff, which was a pretty good incentive for the homeowner to invest in those programs. And then we had a new government come in and they pulled the funding and it all sort of went pear-shaped. Is the government still backing this stuff?
That's been a pretty contentious subject. I mean, if you look at the energy policy and debates, it's kind of come across like a puppet show recently. But I think the fundamental reality is that the economics of this just makes sense. And there are still a few government rebates available federally, so a few $1,000s for adding panels on there. They were trying to take that away as part of the new energy plan and so forth, but recently they announced that they're not going to touch that, so that will continue for the next 13 years. what's really interesting is that the state governments are now bringing in additional rebates for batteries and also for virtual power plants, or the ability for that battery to support the grid in the way we discussed earlier about being able to give the power back during those kind of peak times. And so like the South Australian government up to $6,000 towards the battery, that's massive. Like for the pay-as-you-go option, if you're paying $650 a quarter in Adelaide, you can get a complete solar and battery system for about $350 a quarter on a pay-as-you-go with nothing up front. So these kinds of rebates are meaning that people can literally switch for no cost up front and be saving half on electricity costs. So it's, as this rolls out through the different states, which we anticipate it will, it's just going to enable the mass adoption of this kind of technology, and it's going to accelerate the shift away from coal and gas and into a much lower cost energy structure for all Australians, not just those with solar and batteries.
So what about when we talk about the technology, the equipment that's being made? Like, obviously there must be a pretty substantial process involved in creating these panels and building the panels. I mean, is that stuff built locally? Like, where does that take place?
So most everything, like everything else these days, is made in China, right?
Yeah.
There's a few companies that used to be making things in Europe. Most of them have moved to Chinese manufacturing. There's a company in Australia that is making panels, quote unquote. It's more just kind of assembling the last little bits there. So it's really mostly coming from overseas. Yeah. That said, there's a lot of different degrees of quality. So if you're looking for top quality materials like panels, there's an independent rating company called DNVGL that randomly samples panels and stress tests them. So fires hail at them, wind, etc. So there's a lot of good agencies they're checking, if you will. And that's what we look for in these community programs, is we find the ones that are really good quality, going to have a good warranty, last a long time, and make it easy for customers to get a reliable solution.
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, in relation to the maintenance of these panels. What's the life expectancy on like a typical solar panel installation?
I mean, the solar panels are warranted to produce power for 25 years. And they go for even longer than that as well. I mean, there's no moving parts, right? The sun just hits them and electricity is made. So they're very, very low maintenance. However, there's a few kind of scammy things going out there. The most good quality panels have a self-cleaning film on them. So under normal weather conditions, they will kind of self-clean themselves every time the rain comes or whatever. Some companies are going around saying you need to get them cleaned every year. You need to pay $200 to do that, and yada yada. That's not really accurate, because once you clean the panel, if you're scrubbing the panel down, you're actually scrubbing off that self-cleaning film. And so a lot of people who think, oh yeah, I haven't cleaned it every year, I get them cleaned again. Well, that's because you remove the thing that cleans themselves.
Right.
And so in terms of a maintenance perspective, as long as the job has been done right up front, it's very, very low maintenance. So there's two things we look for around that in our programs. Number one is we require photos from the installers to make sure that all the little things are being done right, kind of under the hood, so to speak, from a car comparison. And then we install free energy monitoring for the whole house. So what that means is the homeowner can see exactly how much power is being created by the panels, used by the batteries, and used in the home. And that's how they can verify it's working properly. Most of the time, these solar checkups are just coming in saying, yep, it's fine, and then they leave and charge you $200. So with this energy monitoring software, you don't have to pay someone to check. And as long as it's been installed right, with good quality gear, with trained installers, it's going to be a very, very reliable system over time.
Amazing. And now, so obviously we're really at the forefront of this, aren't we? I mean, it's really just starting to kick off. You're starting to see, the introduction of, people putting batteries on their homes and that kind of stuff on like a smaller scale. But where do you foresee this heading in the next, say, 10 years?
The projections, not from me, but from industry analysts, consultant projections, Bloomberg, et cetera. There's just an article that came out that says the total battery storage market in Australia over the next few decades is going to be $1.7 trillion. Wow. That's 1,700 billions, right? It's absolutely massive. And the reason why that is because batteries are the key to unlocking a new energy future for both lower costs, because coal is now way too expensive, and also for the climate impacts, which are becoming more and more pressing as people see kind of the impacts of climate change around the world.
Yeah, okay. So it's a pretty exciting space then. And I suppose just in closing, I'd like to maybe just give listeners a little bit of insight, I suppose, as to, some of the projects that you guys are working with at the moment, just so maybe we can relate to, that sort of scale.
Yeah, definitely. So right now we're working on the Sydney Community Solar Program. And what that is we've recruited 10 local solar companies, installers who have that battery training. And we've also brought together the best different products, payment options as well. And so people come to our community events. We've held about 25 so far. We're holding a few next week as well. And people can come to those, learn about everything, browse the products, and get really good bulk buy discounts on these panels and battery systems. From there, we then manage the entire process of the software, and the solar companies then install these systems. Once they're fully installed, then we're going to be releasing the virtual power plant software, where customers will be able to download a free app and connect their battery into the Shine Hub virtual power plant. What that means is that whenever there's a kind of a stressful grid time or the community needs extra power to prevent a blackout, we can actually bring that power from the home batteries, support the community, and then each time that happens, the homeowner receives an additional payment as well. So you can think of it like a bulk buy for solar and batteries to get the power out there, and then the virtual power plant is to intelligently manage that and bring additional savings to each homeowner.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And to see the people's faces when they come to these events, we've literally had people crying because they've been waiting for a solution like this, and they love what it is that we're doing. So just to kind of see that and see how many people we're helping, the smiling faces, the people that are just shaking their hands and going, this is bloody awesome. That's really what it's all about.
Well, I mean, as well, you're looking at, it could solve a lot of problems globally. There's a lot of people less fortunate than us around the world in places that are far more remote and have less access to, typical power off the grid and that kind of thing. So it could solve a lot of issues.
Absolutely. And that's our ultimate goal is, it won't be for the next 5 years, but maybe a decade from now. Our ultimate goal is to electrify a nation.
Right.
And take one of those nations that, if you look at Wikipedia and you see top countries by population, if you look through that list, the top 20 countries, very few have an established, stable electricity grid. And some have next to nothing. And these are the communities that will be able to build everything properly from scratch and provide themselves with education, job opportunities, all the things that we enjoy now that they don't have access to. And so what we're showing here in Australia is that we can transform Australia, but then we can also bring that else around the world to help others who are less fortunate as well.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Well, mate, thank you so much for your time. It's been very interesting. I'm eagerly looking forward to, I suppose, seeing how the landscape of this industry unfold over the next decade. I think it's going to be a absolutely globally changing thing. So
we hope so too. And we always joke in the office, and we say, like, 10 years from now, we're going to have a beer and look back and say, man, look what we built.
Yeah.
That's living the dream, if you ask me.
So for the listeners out there, if you head across to shinehub.com.au, that's the website. And if you go to /installers, if you guys are interested from an installation perspective, you can head across there. And Alex has got some, is it basically guidelines, was it, Alex, on that?
Yeah, that just sets up your account with us, and then we follow up with you to kind of go through how the app works and how we can work together. The other option is just to call the main line, 1-800-898-381, chat with us about it, or email info@shinehub.com.au. We're happy to answer any questions and see if we might be able to work together.
Yeah, and actually, guys, if you do have questions, then by all means, you can just post them wherever you see this episode come through, whether it's on Facebook or in one of the emails or one of the other social media channels. If you've got questions, let me know, and I'll get Alex back on the phone to answer them for you. So, mate, thank you once again.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.